This is your home for the most competitive football in the state of Michigan. Your home for the most comprehensive coverage week in and week out. This is the Mac Attack with Zack and Zack.
One playoff week in the book, but in reality, this is where the playoffs would be starting, right? Last week was a bonus round. It was a COVID catch-all round that, if you weren't able to play the allotted 6 games, as long as you played 4, you were invited to the postseason. Obviously, we would be right now in this would be going into the 11th game of the season. But time-wise, as far as the playoff structure, this is where it would start.
Yeah,
so welcome to the beginning of the playoffs in the second weekend.
A little bit of a gimme last week for a lot of these games, but a game is a game.
Not for some, man.
Well, Grosse Pointe South would disagree with me, but, a game is a game at this point. We talked about this early on. Everybody just wanted to play. We got our season. We got further along, I think, than we thought. I mean, it was kind of...
Mac Red did pretty well.
Yeah, we avoided, knock on wood, a lot of that leading up to the playoffs, and, it's been relatively quiet. We speculated on that. Are we going to see teams start to drop off because of outbreaks when the numbers start to increase? But so far, so good.
This is Wednesday, November 4th. Again, hopefully what we talk about today remains the way that it is. But, obviously in this world, anything is possible. Zach, there are 3 Mac Red involved games this Friday. One of them does involve Mac on Mac crime. We'll get to that a little bit later. But, Zach, the Benefit Sportsbox Player of the Week, benefitsportsbox.com. Make sure you use Mac Attack, all one word, at checkout. Discount off your first box there. Zach, super easy to use right there. A little orange box in the right-hand corner. Click it. You're already on your way. And, Zach, this one, we had a conversation about in what direction to go this week, and these numbers aren't going to be super eye-popping, but I think when you roll it all into context, what Romeo Junior quarterback Logan Rolfs did, 10 of 15, but in those 10 completions, he had 186 yards, 2 touchdown passes. He did have the 2 turnovers, but to me, it was more than just that. It was a 14-point win on the road as an underdog over Anchor Bay. And this marks Romeo. I think the last time Romeo's won a playoff game was 2016. So we've gone through, they've made the playoffs every year between then and now, but they hadn't won a game since they almost ran it back after winning it all in 2015. So I think when you put it all into context and, where this team started, where they are right now, certainly they've got a tough task ahead of them, Zach. But I think, when you roll that all together, a strong argument. Benefit Sportsbox Player of the Week for the opening round of the playoffs, Romeo Junior quarterback Logan Rolfs.
Yeah, it's arguably his best performance of the season.
No doubt.
It felt like the situation he was in as quarterback, you saw Romeo relying heavily on the run game in games previous, but this time they took it to the air and they were successful with it. I think we knew it was going to be a close game against Anchor Bay, just because of the white and the red matchup.
Well, but they were still favored that against Eisenhower.
Yeah, Anchor Bay was still favored. So to come off of that with a big win and have momentum in your favor, that's about as much as you can ask for when matching up against a team like Dakota here in the second round. That's, like you said, no easy task.
No, that is going to be difficult. Again, congratulations to Romeo Junior quarterback Logan Rolfs. He's our Benefit Sportsbox Player of the Week. BenefitSportsbox.com, all kinds of pre- and post-workout supplements. All of them NCAA approved, no banned substances. BenefitSportsbox.com, Mac Attack, all one word at checkout. Little orange box in the corner. Get you started. You're already on your way. And like I said, Zach, 3 games this week, so we're kind of back to what we'd have been used to in Mac Play, where you just get the 3 games in our Alma College Game of the Week. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Alma College, where your life's work is waiting. It's almost unfair to do this because they're all the Game of the Week. When the season is on the line, there is no question that you are playing in the Game of the Week, no matter who you are. But to me, it's the Palace intrigue, the insider action here between Southfield A&T and Stevenson. Again, you can make an argument for Romeo and Dakota. Certainly, you can make an argument for Chippewa Valley and Stony Creek. I'm fascinated by that Chippewa Valley Stony Creek game. There are so many different questions that I have. But you look at Southfield A&T, this is an OAA red team against an MAC red team. We got the pleasure of seeing that last week, and we saw what that meant the game wasn't as close and didn't go the way we thought, but it was a great football game. Look, Zach, when you match up the MAC Red and the OAA Red in football, something special is going to happen.
Oh, it's going to be a heck of a game. I mean, you got a lot on the line here aside from just playoffs. I mean, you're talking bragging rights. You've got a little bit of unknown between these teams. It's not a team you're used to matching up with. And, Southfield A&T at 3-4, Stevenson 6-1. We know that those records don't mean much these days. We saw what happened with Oak Park and Grosse Pointe South last week. I mean, we come to find out there were some heavy hitters coming back from off some games. We know a little bit more now than we knew last week.
And so it does seem like Oak Park got a boost going into the playoffs. And Zach, you mentioned Oak Park. They lost 33-6 to that Southfield A&T squad. But you look, they lost. Southfield A&T did to Clarkston 24-17, to West Bloomfield 17-15. They lost to Stony Creek 36-7. To me, that one's interesting as we think about the game we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. And they shut out Oxford. And those of you that are familiar, especially with Romeo, are familiar with what Oxford's capable of doing. And so this Southfield A&T team, a lot of times when the MAC Red gets out of district or out of conference, they have this advantage of a brutal schedule under their belt to where they're not going to be surprised by what's presented in front of them. The difference is this time, this team feels the exact same way.
Yeah, Southfield's got the same thing.
No advantage when it comes to what they've seen.
That's a wash right there.
War stories they both can tell.
Yeah, and Stevenson is playing really good football right now. I like their offense. I really like their defense.
Again, it's all without Jordan Ramsey. It's been unfortunately spectacular. I mean, I say unfortunately because certainly you want to see them firing on all cylinders, but the success they've had regardless has been something to see.
I still think Stevenson is primed for another run similar to what they had last year, but this will not be their most difficult game of the district, but maybe it's going to be up there. It's going to be up there.
Yeah, I mean, like we said last week, if things hold the way that you that the odds say likely they will, it'll be West Bloomfield next week for Stevenson if they're fortunate enough to get past A&T, and so again to have to go back-to-back OAA Red. But again, at that point, if you're able to win both of those games, what's in front of you?
Exactly. That's what I mean.
You know what's in front of you, though? If you think about it, likely?
Possibly Dakota.
And then, ultimately, maybe again, Davidson.
Wow. Wouldn't that be something? A rematch.
Again.
That overtime barn burner from last year.
I'm a million years ahead of myself there, I know, but it's all there. And, Stevenson has showed this season, both this season and last season, they can hang around. They can beat anybody.
Yep.
They're not going to be outclassed. They're not going to be blown out. This is a team that's going to make you earn every single inch. They're going to earn every single inch on their end. And I think this is going to be a great game. Stevenson's going to have to come out fast, and I think they're going to have to smack, and I don't mean physically like you saw in the Bears game last week, but I mean they're going to have to come out and smack A&T in the mouth immediately. They can't let A&T come out and throw the first punch. If they do, though, if Southfield does do that, I think with Stevenson, I like their ability to be able to withstand something happening that doesn't go their way early on and having the mental fortitude to turn it around. Again, this should be a great game. I'm not going to undersell the Warriors, but I mean, I'm taking the Titans. I think this is a game that we saw last year in the playoffs that even if the circumstances get a little dicey, they have been able to overcome a lot of different things in a lot of different situations, especially in the postseason. I'm taking Stevenson.
And I don't blame you, Zach. I mean, I think Stevenson is playing, like we said, it's playoff caliber football. They're feeling comfortable with where they're at right now. You don't want to get your back up against the wall. You don't want to get your back up. You don't want to be playing from behind.
So I said smack first.
In any situation like that. I'm going to give the edge to Stevenson as well. I think the MAC Red prevails in this matchup here, which is something I'm sure all of our listeners like to hear. But tough road ahead for Stevenson in that district if they do get past this.
Travel to the heart of the Mitten and check out Alma College. You'll find a campus that feels like home with small classes and endless opportunities. The Alma commitment also means an on-time graduation guarantee, academic and career planning, and $2,500 to explore the world outside of the classroom. Zach, number 6 Romeo will travel to Dakota, the second seed. Now remember, these are different districts. Stevenson was isolated. The next 2 games we're going to talk about, the winners will play each other. Not the case, obviously, for Stevenson, though ultimately the winners of these districts will play each other. So they are back-to-back, but not in the same. So, look, I mean, the good news is here for Romeo, not for both of them, but for one of them and for you and I, the good news is unless the unthinkable happens, which, again, I told you how stressed out I am over any kind of cancellation or forfeiture or whatever, just because of how devastating it would be. But we're going to get a spot in the district title game. This game. Where's
the applause button here?
This game's going to guarantee us. It is.
That's big news. That'll be 2 years running now that we've had one of the red teams reach their district championship here. I like what I'm seeing out of Romeo. I mean, if I'm them, regardless of how this game plays out, I gotta like the way we finished the season. Hate the way we started.
Yeah, if you're the Dogs,
really like. If I'm Coach Reines
right now,
I like the way they finished this up. But gosh, talk about hitting a brick wall, though. This Dakota team is going to be that brick wall that I think really gives Romeo its first.
Is Romeo's best football enough?
Yeah, exactly. Is there any situation that results in a Romeo win here? I don't know. They did play well against Dakota in the regular season, first half.
And that's been true for several teams, right? Only Stevenson's been able to be the one that's gone the 4 quarters.
Yeah, and that was an interesting game there. But for Romeo, man, I don't know if Rolfs and the offense can pull it off against this Dakota defense, and I don't know if they can really stop.
Do they have the answer?
Yeah.
Does Romeo have the answer?
Does anybody?
Defensively? I mean, I don't know. Romeo is really playing their best football right now, and we talked about last week and the success Dakota had. That was without DeJavian and Stepney. I mean, this offense doesn't, and again, the competition, it was what it was, right? Lance Cruz North had only played 4 games. They lost all 4. But you see what this offense is capable of doing situationally when you can extract, and we've seen it both this season, Sloan not play, Stepney not play, the results don't look any different.
Right.
They're the same. They're the same. And I'm not saying that you're not better off with both of them. You are, but even when you remove one, the other one is able to overcome and do the work of both. And Zach, you're right. Romeo is definitely playing their best football right now, but is it enough? Do they have the weapons? I'll tell you one thing, Zach, if it is going to be enough, Romeo's going to have to be at their best, and it's going to be about execution, but it's also going to be about limiting the mistakes. When I say at their best, I mean, we're talking bare bones when it comes to penalties. I mean, you have to limit your turnovers. You got to win the turnover battle. You have to score when you force the turnover, and when you give it up, you've got to stop them. And I know I'm giving a long list, but this is what it takes to beat Dakota. And there's a lot there.
What you're saying is you basically have to have a flawless game. That's what you're asking the Bulldogs to do right now.
And even then, you're only going to win by a few points. I mean, that's what happened with Stevenson, right? I mean, and Stevenson, one of the great things about Stevenson, and this is not about them, I apologize for bringing him in, but they know how to win ugly. That's why they won that game.
Yeah.
Can Romeo do that too? And it's such a difficult ask for anybody, and I just, and it's unfortunate for Romeo, and maybe they're thinking to themselves, well, it's not unfortunate. This is what we want. Of course,
in the
second round. But what I mean is,
come on. You want that game against Dakota.
I know. But what I'm saying is, it's unfortunate that you play your best football only to run up against a team against which it just might not matter. Any given Friday, Romeo is capable of winning this game. I'm not saying that Dakota's invincible. I just, I'm just going to say it. I mean, obviously, I'm drawing this out. I'm taking Dakota.
Do you know who understands that any team in the playoffs is beatable? It's Dakota.
Well, absolutely.
Because last year against Chippewa Valley, they came in and they shocked the world and
I think
won first round.
And I think they felt shocked when they lost to Stevenson the next week.
Well, they
had different circumstances, but still.
But yeah, we're coming. But they know that this is playoff football. This is everything on the line. This is seniors who are potentially making any game is their last game. Romeo has the ability to fight hard and play that tough-nosed football. We'll see what happens. But the way Dakota is playing, in my opinion, and yours as well, because you've mentioned this longer than I have, they've been the most consistent team overall in the MAC Red so far this season.
The power, Zach, the explosion, that home run ability. I know mixing sports metaphors, but that home run ability, that I'll leave the metaphor out, that big play ability, and the opportunity that they put themselves in to be able to hit that at almost any time from anywhere, whether it's offense or defense, it just...
Well, I think at the beginning of playoffs, if you would have asked either one of us who had the best chance of going the deepest in the playoffs, it was either going to be Grosse Pointe South or it was going to be Dakota.
You're talking about going back before the opening round
Before
of the
the
playoffs?
opening round of
Yeah,
playoffs.
absolutely.
And now that Grosse
put
Pointe
them
South
even.
is out of it, it's all Dakota. I think Dakota has the weight of the MAC Red on their shoulder right now, and I think this is going to be...
Stevenson will object and say that we're the top seed around here.
I get it, but still, I think Dakota, like we said, consistent football. I think they get past the Bulldogs and they start looking ahead to next week.
Yeah, but I know they won't look ahead until next week until you and I both know that until they get past the Bulldogs, if that is what to happen. Zach, one more, Chippewa Valley on the road against Stony Creek. Stony Creek is the top seed in this MAC-heavy division, make that MAC-heavy district. And, I mean, obviously, you turn in a 6-0 finish. You're the only one that's undefeated. That's the way it's going to go. Do they benefit? The not literal $1 million question, but the $1 million question, do they benefit from the bye or do they not benefit from the bye?
We've tried to kind of analyze that the last couple of weeks.
I don't think it helped Chip last week in the playoffs, even though they won. I don't think it helped them in that game against Eisenhower, not playing the week before that against King.
Yeah, and that was through obviously
no fault of their own. And
right.
the same is true for Stony Creek, right? They didn't pick this.
Right, but that's just kind of how not everything that happens as a number one seed is necessarily an advantage. The lower matchup, the home field advantage. It doesn't necessarily always work out that way, but in a season like this, I think it hurts. I think you want to play as many football games as possible. I think you want your team to be battle tested. You saw what happened throughout the season as teams found a rhythm. Yeah. There's a lot of confusion early on in the season. You saw teams struggling and then somehow kind of pull ahead. I don't think we ever would have thought that Romeo would have outlasted Grosse Pointe South in the playoffs, but here we are. The more games you play, the more opportunity you have, and I think that's going to work against Stony Creek, and you combine that with the fact that they're coming from the white.
It's a little different.
Chippewa Valley is a, let's be honest, this team was ahead of the pack early on in the season.
Just not
something
that far
happened
from a state title.
Something happened.
Let's not forget that.
The names are familiar. The players that you see,
the faces are different though. The names are familiar, but the faces.
But the way they play has not. It is those kids.
Schuster to Schuster, Harris to Harris. Like, I'm not going to argue with that.
Those kids can be a huge offensive threat when they're firing on all cylinders.
I mean, it is crazy how that
they got to step up though.
Works. Yeah,
they got to step up though
That's
because this is important.
That's the thing. And Zach, the OA white, I think to me it's comparable to what you get in the MAC white. Again, I love anytime you get relatively equal competition, whether it's red and red or even red and white. I love when the MAC and the OAA match up. It's something special. Always
those
happens.
bragging rights. It's Oakland County versus Macomb County.
It's the best.
Yeah.
Not only it's the bragging rights, but it's the best brands of football. I think statewide, there are some others that'll make arguments, right? Obviously, the Catholic League, and I don't think Grand Rapids. I don't think the Grand Rapids area gets enough credit when we talk about.
No, we just don't see them enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't. It's not something that we match up with until we get really deep.
No, I mean, you got to get to the final. It's just the way it works, right? It's a geographical pairing to a certain extent. But Zach, you're absolutely right when it comes to Chippewa Valley. They need to do more, and they need to do more for multiple reasons. And the first one is the most simple, is that because I know they can do more. I need to see more out of that offense because that offense is capable of doing more, capable of distributing the ball more efficiently, having more success on first down, on third down, getting into the end zone more frequently, making less mistakes. I know, and this defense too is also capable of being stingy and making that big play. But here's the thing, Zach, it seems like you're not really sure which Chippewa Valley you're going to see, and it takes a minute for them to get going. It's almost, again, we talked about the notion of a jump start that they need, and it's like, that whether it's the regular season or not, you don't get a jump start in the regular season, but the lack or the need to have some kind of jump start in the postseason will be the end of you.
Yeah.
So if Chippewa Valley can be that team that we saw in weeks 2 and 3, I mean, we're waiting for it.
Donde
está that offense?
The alarm clock is going off. It's time to wake up. But
yes,
I mean, looking at this matchup here, it may not be our game of the week, but it might be the game that I'm most excited to see how it plays out.
I think it's the most interesting game.
That's a great way to put it.
Absolutely.
That being said, even though Stony Creek walks into that with that 6-0 record, we know that undefeated teams can be bounced from the playoffs, and defeated teams can win games in the playoffs. So I don't think we throw all those records out the window. Even at 3-3, I think Chippewa Valley is a better team. I'm going to stick with the Red Kingdom here and pick Chippewa Valley to upset the Stony Creek Cougars.
I'm going to take the Big Reds too, and I'm taking them based on an assumption. And it's unfortunate, and I don't mean this as an insult, but it's unfortunate that I have to do it based on an assumption. I'm taking Chippewa Valley, assuming that the team that I referenced a couple minutes ago is the one that shows up, the one that can distribute the ball through the air, the one that can distribute the ball on the ground, the one that can be stifling defensively, and the one that can do it for 4 quarters. I've seen that team before this season. I've seen that team across years when you look at the program.
Sure.
And I think I'm going to see it this Friday. But, Zach, I will tell you this right now. If that is not the team that I see, that game is going to go the other way and go it quickly.
See what happens. It's anybody's game.
So, Zach, to recap, you and I have Stevenson, Dakota, and Chippewa Valley, which
all in agreement.
Which would make for, can we get a Chippewa Valley Dakota district final?
Ooh,
and
make that happen.
And then on top of that, do you end up with a Stevenson West Bloomfield district final? Winners go again. Come on.
It's shaping up to be a really good time to be a Mac Red fan. And as we know, you all are out there.
Friday night, these games go, but check your time. Some at 7, some at 7:30, depending on the coverage. I believe Chippewa Valley and Stony Creek is going to be on Fox Sports Detroit, so very exciting. Remember, they were supposed to play. Chippewa Valley was against King on television, so I'm so glad they get the opportunity.
Get that exposure.
So they've gotten their last home game. Right now, they're going to get to play back on TV. You get back some of the things you missed. I'm so glad it went that way. But let us know what you're up to, pictures, videos, stats, all kinds of stuff. We love seeing it. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, 32andmain.com.
Thanks for listening to the Mac Attack with Zack and Zack. For more, visit 32andmain.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Mac Attack Pod. And don't forget to like the Mac Attack with Zack and Zack on Facebook. The Mac Attack is a proud member of the 32 and Main Network.